Hi there, and welcome to How To with Ann Malum. When deciding to do this podcast, I really wanted to create something that could give people real tools on how to execute on certain things. So often we talk about things on such a macro scale that, yes, leaves people inspired, but with no real idea on what the steps are to make something in their own life happen. I challenge and encourage and probe my amazing guests to get granular and specific on their strategies, their mindset, their tactics, and their methodologies so that you can learn practical, actionable steps to best optimize your confidence, career, health, and wealth. What's up, everybody? I am Ann Malum, and welcome to the podcast. I have one goal here, and it is to help you achieve ultimate optimization in your career, health, and wealth. Every guest I bring on has a proven track record of success in these areas, and we dive into tips, advice, and real-life examples on how you can do it too. We're fortunate today to have Josh Cadillac with us. Josh is a real estate coach, a national speaker, and author who trains real estate professionals how to close for life by building lasting success through extensive knowledge. His unique method combines the education real estate professionals need to survive in the industry with the tools to convert that knowledge into rapport, credibility, and trust. Josh has been a top producer since going full-time in 2008, quickly learning many of the most prestigious certification and designations in the industry. And today, Josh is going to teach us all how to be the CEO of our own life. Welcome, Josh. How are you doing today?
And I'm hanging out with you. Life doesn't get much better than this for me. This is always great to see you and to be here. So thank you for having me on.
Well, it sounds like you need to get out more.
Yeah, it does, right?
Yeah, well, we appreciate you taking the time to be here. So why don't you just first give our listeners a little bit of background about you, who you are, some moments in your life that feel like make you who you are, and how you got to be sitting here today.
Anna, as I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, I'm working on a new project right now where it's kind of made me codify and crystallize this a little bit. I'm always struck by the fact of how much it's the valleys where we grow. It's the hard things that we survive and persevere through. So all of my stories of how I got to be where I am and who I am are going to be stories about surviving tough times. In 2008, I came into, that great recession pretty well positioned. I was long in restaurants. I had just opened a brand new restaurant concept that was doing really well. I was long in commercial real estate, wasn't over leveraged, and I got wiped out. And so 2008, I had to start from scratch, lost millions of dollars and had to start from scratch. So we're talking about the defining things, the things that got me where I am. It was coming back from that and the journey of what that looks like.
But before you move on from that point, I actually want you to talk a little bit more about that. I think sometimes we just skip over those difficult parts, and talk me through the emotional distress. Like, if you're telling me you kind of lost everything you were working toward, what that felt like. Can you remember the emotional state that you were in?
Sure. Actually, in the book that I'm writing right now, I actually was talking about this. So it's quite fresh, actually. The last thing my father said to me before he passed away was, you take care of your mother, your brother, and your sister. And he left me this business and all these things, and I had this responsibility to carry. And on my watch, it went down. So the shame, the fear, all the things that that would normally be associated with this, if you did it to yourself, compounded by the fact that the last great thing that you were bestowed, the last great responsibility that was turned over to you by the person you respected most in the world, you now flubbed the dub on, you dropped the ball. So it hurt in a deep way. And realistically, I'm almost glad that it was that way, because I didn't really until I was writing my book a few weeks ago, in my book, I never thought about the fact that I really could blame somebody else for this, hey, this whole housing crisis, I didn't do it. It's not my fault. Like, I got to tell you, and I never even went through my mind. It's just like, here's this pile of garbage that I now have in front of me. What am I going to do about it? Because the choice, if you give yourself the choice, that's the biggest mistake you got going. There can't be a choice. It has to be, and this is one of the things that we're really banging around a lot right now, is this idea of having standards. And those standards take away the choices. And so for me, the standard was always, you take care of your family. And so that meant I had to do the next thing that I needed to do to take care of my family, regardless of what it meant that was going to cost me. So for me, I had to go and find a way to build back, to get back to the place I am now, where I built back everything that was lost and then some. I built thriving businesses, and also, yeah, it was not a good time, but I think that there's kind of this sense in that bad time that there's two ways you can go. You could let it own you, or you can use it as fuel to take and be better.
Oh, Josh, we could talk about this topic the whole conversation, and it's exactly right. And I love what you said about the choice. I speak about that a lot with people. I'm like, you're giving yourself too many options. When you give yourself options, you're telling yourself that the easier option is okay. Take the option off the table. Take the I'm going to push snooze. Like, this still sounds so silly, but for people who are listening who do solid core, when we're up on the handlebars and we're doing an exercise up there, you can't modify. You can't like go to your knees like you would in a plank. And everybody figures it out. Like, no one doesn't not do the exercise. No one goes to you can't. But once we get down and we're doing a plank on the machine itself, everybody goes to their knees because it's easier and the option is available to us. And I have learned so much through those analogies of just like, I'm giving myself an easier option and it needs to come off the table. And I think that is the difference of people who are resilient and who make it. And when you say failure is not an option, like, it's just not up for discussion or negotiation, even talking about it, because you don't want to put the energy out there. It's pretty amazing how your brain gets on board with it.
Well, I mean, I think that there's really an acknowledging of the schizophrenia of the human interaction. And what I mean by that, the human experience, I should say, which is this: you have a version of yourself inside of you that knows you shouldn't eat the Oreos that are in the cupboard. But yet you will sit there and have a negotiation with yourself and lose the negotiation and be covered in a short order in chocolate dust and jam, right? We've gone through this. And to me, I kind of split these two voices in my head because I teach real estate. I'm talking to real estate agents who are kind of their own boss. I'm talking about the fact that, hey, look, you have a CEO and you have a staff. And you happen to be both. You have both jobs.
Mm-hmm.
The CEO is the one that when the alarm clock goes off says, hey, you got to get up. Let's get going. The staff says, 5 more minutes, Mom. And if I really pull it back, Ann, this is not something that's exclusive to business. This is in life too. The CEO is the one that wants to invest in your long-term good. The CEO will take less in the moment so that you can be greater in the future. The staff wants to feel good now. So going to my knees in a plank is a lot easier. That feels good in the moment. Like, you know what? I'm going to be future Josh too. And the CEO is concerned with future Josh a lot more than he's concerned with current Josh. He's willing to sacrifice some of current Josh to have a better future Josh. And that's the guy I need in charge. That's how a business is built.
Yeah, Josh, I remember in the pandemic, and I know people are sick of hearing about that, but in the very early stages, in a matter of days, it was, okay, what's going to happen? Business is going to slow down to shutting our doors. And I remember having a team call with all of my employees, and I specifically said to them, I cannot promise you it is not going to be bumpy for a while, but what I can promise you is you will have a job to come back to. And that is my job, hard stop, period. It's going to be uncomfortable right now, and I can't fix that. But every decision that I will make until we get reopened and get through this thing will be to the future of this company. And
as I look at that, and it's I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but as I listen to it, that is actually, and I don't know whether you did it on purpose or not, but that is a standard that you have for you. See, this is the kind of the step back. The CEO is important, but in order for the CEO to do his job, he needs to know, or she needs to know, what kind of company they're running. Right. Mm-hmm. And that comes from the standards that you have for your life. So I could just listening to you have a standard. You take care of your people. Right. And so yes, for me, these are the kind of things I want them to say over my coffin. Who is this guy? You know what? Come hell or high water, he took care of his people. That's a standard. That's what my life is about. So that needs to inform the decisions my CEO makes. And my CEO then, and this is the important thing about a CEO getting it right, the CEO needs to be the best boss you've ever worked for. Because we've worked for a lot of lousy bosses, right? I've had bosses that rode me like a rented mule, right? And you know what? Some of those were some of the best bosses I had because I needed to be rode like a rented mule. It depends. But that voice, that CEO voice, needs to be the one that is the most empowered, looking out for the employee more than anybody ever has. They need
Yeah.
someone sitting there saying, hey, look, my voice is, look, all right. He looks down at me, Josh, and he says, all right, what do I got to work? What is this guy? What do we got to do with this guy? You know what? This guy's a little OCD. You know what? I'm going to set all my systems up to irritate the hell out of him if he's not doing what he's supposed to. I'm going to use his OCD against him to make sure that I get him to do what he needs to do. Because what I want is for Josh to be the most productive guy possible. Because even though he's a little lazy maybe in his heart at times, when he's doing it, getting a whole lot done and feeling super productive, that's a great
Yeah.
feeling. And that works for me, right? And so the CEO's job is to take and empower the person that's actually got to go to the gym and do the exercises. The CEO is the guy that takes and fills out what the exercises are going to be. He sets up the workout and hands it to the staff and says, go do this. Because you know as well as I do, right? You go to the gym, right? And if the goal of the gym is, hey, look, I got to do these 12 sets of whatever, and then I'm done, versus I got to go work out. What happens when you got to just go work out? 7 sets later, you're coming home. I feel like I got enough. I can go, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, Josh, I love that. I've literally so many things to say what you just said. One, standards. And do you think, like, if you're coaching somebody, it sounds like that's a really great first step, because I bet a lot of people don't even know their standards.
And I got to tell you this, when I was writing my book, as a guy that I try to be really interested, I try to be a guy that doesn't need a lot of outside help, right? I never really had written my standards down there.
Yep.
At least one of the best exercises. I thought I'd have 2 or 3. You know, I grew up with a dad, as I said, was born in 1930, tough businessman, you know, really hard-minded guy. You know, you do what you got to do. I mean, I've seen this guy do stuff that, you know, like just sheer will. If he could bottle that, man, it's incredible, right? But I thought I'd have 3, maybe 2, 3. I had like 20 and I had to stop. Like, well, I try to be everybody better than I find. That's
and I think the things I love to hear some of them, and I think the things to remember, because we trick ourselves, Josh, when we can write down things that who we want ourselves to be, and we're like, oh yeah, this is a standard of mine. And I've done this exercise as well, and I've when I've coached people or whatever, and like, to give me an example of when you've lived up to that standard, and there should be plenty. Because if you can't tell me that, like, oh, family first no matter what, but you don't have consistent examples of that being the case, that's not a standard. That's a future self thing, and you need
an aspiration.
Is an aspiration. And I think, you know, again, we trick ourselves a lot because we like the way that it sounds. And I remember, again, you'll get a kick out of this, but I remember dating somebody a while ago, and he went away and, you know, didn't communicate with me for like 48 hours, which was not our communication style. And I was just like, this is not a standard of mine. I don't know if you're trying to either play games with me, or you're doing this deliberately, or you didn't think not to do it. None of those answers are good in my book. And like, it is not a standard that I will tolerate for you to disrespect our relationship when you're away with zero communication. And it was like stepping into, again, my power, my boundaries, my standards. And the response was just one, incredible. You get respect from people when you communicate your standards and what you will and will not tolerate. And it was just a moment when I'm like, oh, these standards are really important, and people need to know what they are around me in all areas of my life, not just professional.
I think it circles back to the most important respect that there is, which is that respect for yourself. So that ability to look yourself in the mirror and know the person that's looking back at you as a person that demands respect. And so here's the thing. I mean, for me, it starts with the standards, because the standards are what's going to take and inform what my CEO, the version my long-term investor in me, needs to do. So how can I take and set goals for myself if I don't know how this business fits into my life, right? I want to have a business, because business is such a big part of what my life is. I need to have a business that's commensurate with my standards. So first I gotta have the standards, then I build my business around that. Then I can set my goals. Because here's the thing, when I make a phone call to somebody, I'm not following the lead. I'm following with the lead to close a customer for life. Why? Because I don't do deals. I leave customers in a place that they will never do business with anyone else ever again, or that's failure.
Yeah.
That's a difference that exists in my industry, right? But that's commensurate with all the things. That allows me, though, and this is the big thing, to have a work that I'm proud of. I look myself in the mirror and I know I run a business that has standards that other people don't adhere to. I take the road less traveled, the hard road, and I can look myself in the eyes and know I'm that guy that does it that way. Now, maybe you don't get it right all the time. You're right, 90% of the time. Now, there's times that, well, I should work on this or take a nap. Naps are awesome. And, next thing you know, audiobook's on and I'm in dreamland. It's a thing. You don't always get it right, but I know when I got wrong, because the thing is, the person that's the most full of crap in my life is me. I BS myself all the time. And I know my own crap. And that's my staff. And I also know it. I'm aware of it. And so I set my systems up to keep me from getting away with it.
Yeah. I love that. And, I can speak to that with I quit drinking this year, and I had gotten in this habit of having a cocktail, one or two like tequila sodas most nights. And I always justified it. Like, I work out well, I'm successful. I've done this, I've done that. There are a lot of people out there who drink that didn't do what I do in a day. And I am the one who deserves it. And again, I wanted to protect that bad habit. So I call it the justification equation. And the justification equation always equals keep doing the thing you shouldn't be doing. And
you're talking about a negotiation with yourself that you lose. How can we not say this human experience is not schizophrenic? You're literally, how do you have a negotiation without two parties? There's a little angel, you want to call it the CEO and the staff, the angel, the devil, whatever. They're there and they're doing war. And so the trick is to habituate the CEO winning. If the CEO goes in with a plan, you're set. Look, one of the biggest things I see in coaching, and you could probably speak this to, Ann, is people that work hard and come home feeling like crap. And how does that happen? Well, for me, that is a clear indication that your CEO isn't doing their job. Because my job as a CEO is to take and figure out how to take and define the win before I go in. Before I go into the office, I know exactly what I need to do task-wise in order to, if I complete all this stuff, I have done my business to the standards that I need. And when I leave work, I don't think about it. I've done what I needed to do today in order to take that one more progressive step to being more like what I want this to be. In order to do that, I have to have the discipline of having, tasks laid out for myself. I have tasks at the end of my day that are going to be work on this next big project, but I know I'm going to see that task tonight and it's going to make me make progress on that thing. And that way I know I've done everything I need to do. And that's my CEO setting me up so that when I'm done with work, I can move on to the next section of my life and approach that with excellence as well. Everything can get maximal excellence in its time. I think there's just so much to that.
Yeah. So it makes me want to push us deeper into exactly why people end up feeling mediocre about their lives. And you touched on a massive point that I also put in my own life to talk about, which is that most people end up feeling busy and productive is a little bit better than busy. But what you want is progress. What you want is direction. What you want is feeling like you're getting closer to the goal of what you're driving toward, because that is actually what makes you feel like you're accomplished. And I think a lot of people mess up, and I want your take on this, to the point where you just said, I'm going to go to the gym today. And you go to the gym and you might get the workout in, but it's directionless. You don't know what you're working toward. You didn't have a goal. So it was more of a checkboxing exercise than actually I need to do this specific thing, and here's the reason why. So when you think about why people, again, feel, get cavalier about things or maybe not as optimized, do you, agree with that statement that there's just not enough specificity around the goals and the reasons why they're doing it?
Sure. To be that fault, I agree with that entirely. I mean, that falls back to that being a bad CEO. So it would be like if you work for me, right? Mm-hmm. And I said to you, Ann, go get stuff done. And you work all day, you get stuff done, and you come back and say, hey, Josh, I got stuff done. And I say, well, Ann, did you do this? Did you do this? Well, no, but I got all this other stuff done. Oh, we did do this, this, and this. If that happens to you every single day, because here's the thing, while we're full of crap with ourselves, We know we're full of crap with ourselves, right? And so when we look ourselves in the mirror, we know that we're underperforming. We know it in our soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the reason why we feel like garbage, as opposed to, hey, look, I went in and I had a plan and I executed the plan. I have
Mm-hmm.
nothing to be ashamed of. Pulling the shame away, setting your life up in such a way that because all the stuff you're talking about is pre-planning. And to me, that's what the CEO's job is. But the problem really is the living of life is so time consuming that we spend all of our time with our staff hat on that we forget that we're also in charge. We're the boss. And we're supposed to be a good boss to ourselves. Most people are a terrible boss to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen that as well as we talk about CEOs and how to be a good leader. What I see a lot is people say things like, "Well, I have 10 years experience, I have 12 years experience, I have 15 years experience, therefore, that equates to this title and this pay," without actually understanding, what the title and the job is. And Josh, I mean, it took me a long time to learn how to be a good leader because I didn't learn any of it in school. And I found myself as a CEO at 27 from an organization that I founded. And I thought being the boss meant people need to be intimidated by me. I need to tell them what to do. I need to be hard on people. I need to be constantly, all of that stuff because I didn't know any better. And it's really apparent to me as I've worked with a ton of people that a lot of folks aren't doing the work in the off season, meaning they aren't reading the books, listening to the podcasts, doing the professional development to understand what it means to be a good CEO or a good leader or a good boss. And if you've got to give tips to some of those folks who are in those positions now and are managing and leading people, what are some of the things that you feel like they could focus on to improve those skill sets?
Um, I there's a few. I mean, some of these are things that I picked up from my dad, and I realistically, as I look back, the things that made me successful were seeing the way that he did what he did. So I try to never ask anybody to do more than what I would do myself.
Okay.
I want the respect of my people, and I get that by putting the work in myself. I don't hack things. I'm not a hacker. My life hack is I do the work. And so my employees,
I love that.
my employees, if you ask them who works hardest in my office, they'll say me. And it's like, there's never, I mean, people always come to me up, gee, Josh, I'm sorry about it. I know you're always, oh, no, come on in. Right? I want them to know that I'm busy. Even if I'm out of town and speaking all over the country or whatever, they know my itinerary. They know that I'm getting in at 1:00 in the morning and I'm there in the office when they get there the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because setting that figure, look, there's a reason why great generals will go out there with the men and they'll parade in open fire. They'll get shot at because it shows the men that, you know what, this can be endured, this can be persevered through. So setting that example, if you will.
I wish there was more we could disagree on because I'm good at that. But I'm just going to commend Josh for that. And guys, whatever business you're in, and again, I'll take solid course. Josh is taking real estate of being in the office. If I still coach classes, I still am in the studio. I want people to see and know that and learn from that and watch. That nothing is either one beneath you and two, that like you're showing up as well. You're not expecting people to be like, oh no, you go do that job and I'll sit at home and work, where you need to be in the studio. We dealt with that in the pandemic too, where our employees didn't want to come into our HQ and we're like, guys, the only reason you have a job is because our coaches are going into the studios and coaching clients. And if we are going to tell them that we're going to work from home, it says that like you guys need to go take the risk or to do the work, but like we should be comfortable in our pajamas. And thank God you're doing that because that's how we get our paychecks. It just creates a really bad taste in people's mouths. And perception is reality. That's always going to be true in my book.
There's a line, there's a great poem written by Rudyard Kipling, and there's one line that always, poem's called If, right? And it's a guy explaining to his son, like, if you do all these things, this is how you be a good man, how to be a good man, right? And one of the lines in the book, and this is, it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, this is just a great line. But the line I love in that one, it says, if you can fill each unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, And I love that. I love that because, one of the things that we don't acknowledge, especially in real estate, this is like a thing that nobody talks about, but sales in general, it is actually very emotionally hard on you to do this business because there's a lot of rejection. I
Yeah.
mean, unless you're really wired special, that rejection takes its toll. And I got to tell you, Ann, I don't care how long you've been doing this and how good you are. There's days you get up and everything goes wrong. And you're sitting here saying, why the hell am I still doing this? And
Yeah.
if you don't have a plan in place for that, once again, you know it's coming. You know it's a thing. You know the bad days are going to get there. Why don't I have a plan in place for that? Why am I not ready to take
Mm-hmm.
and get because if I'm the CEO of the company, who's responsible for the morale of the staff?
You.
Me. I'm the staff. But I know, the thing is, I know the things that get my blood back up again. Those days where you're bloodied and battered, you feel like you got two black eyes and a broken leg, but you can watch something or listen to something and you can look that coach in the eye and say, you know what, coach, put me back in. I got a couple more plays left in me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the
Uh,
days. Those are the ones when you define yourself to yourself.
yeah. I love, and if the CEO, again, if there's 6 seconds left and the game is tied, and if you don't want the ball, as the CEO, you're in the wrong role. You always have to want the ball when you're in a crisis or there's pressure, and you frankly need to, thrive in that, in that situation. Okay, so cool. First one first is you're the hardest working guy in there, and you do the work. What other leadership tricks and traits, or not even tricks? What other leadership character traits and action traits do you practice that make you really good at that?
My people all know that I care about them on a personal level.
Okay.
Know that they matter to me. So I'm never asking them to do anything more than what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
And I show them that their value to me extends past the work that they do. I am a person that I'm a big believer and I always answer my phone. If somebody needs bail money and they only got one phone call, if they want somebody that's going to answer their phone, it'll be me. And that's a commitment I have to my people. It's a commitment I have to everything that matters to me, whether it's a business relationship or whatever else. But I think that your willingness to do what other people aren't is a big portion of that. And so I think that's a big piece of humanizing the experience of work. If work is just about money, then all the passion that can come from it is lost. Unless your passion is really the accumulation of money. And when we think about the stories in literature of the accumulate, who do we have? We have Silas Marner, we have Ebenezer Scrooge. We don't have happy people.
Mm-hmm.
Happy people's lives are about more than that. Work is something that needs to be put in a balance. Should there be passion to it? Absolutely. If there's not passion in your work, fix it. It's your CEO's job to figure out how to make it passionate for you. I tell a story about pancakes. I started working for my dad when I was 9 years old. He took me out of school. He hired a professional teacher to teach me. And from 6 in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I would work for him in a school cafeteria operation. And then I'd go to school from 1 o'clock to whenever I was finished each day. That was my life growing up from 5th grade all the way up. And you can imagine it's a 5-day-a-week job. So I'm not thrilled with this. One Saturday, we get roped into doing this pancake breakfast for the attached church to the school. And so the deal is, it's like an all-you-can-eat pancake breakfast to get all these guys in to help them do some sort of project, whatever. So they tell me at like 12, you're going to be making all the pancakes. The thing is, Ann, and this is part of my crazy, I've never made a pancake, and I hate doing things I don't know how to do, like when I'm on the spot. Like, give me a kitchen, let me take and work on pancakes on my own time, and then when I'm good at it, I'll go in there and I'll shut. But to take and learn on the fly, it's just not how my crazy works, right? So this is already set up to be a loser. And it's my mom is going in there to do the thing. This other guy who's like a short order cook for 30 years and me. So we've got like Babe Ruth on the bench to work the grill making the pancakes. No. We're going to take and get the backup catcher to come pinch it and have me make this guy's been making pancakes for 30 years. Let's have Josh make the pancakes. I don't even know the logic that went into it. So I'm like really, really pissed and like almost to a passive aggressive point. But they tell me, hey, look, Josh, if you work this, you can get 6 pancakes on this grill because it's a tiny little grill. That's all it was. And so they leave me alone and I'm making the pancakes. And they're like, just keep making pancakes. We don't know how many, but we're eating a ton of them, right? So I'm just making my 6 pancakes. And I'm looking at the grill. And I have 2 ways I could go with this thing. I could just do what I was told and make my 6 stupid pancakes at a time. But as I'm looking at the grill, I'm like, you know what? If I slide these pancakes out a little bit, I think I can get 8 on the grill. Flash forward about 45 minutes later, I got 12 pancakes on the grill. There's not an inch of grill space left. I've messed with the heat enough where as soon as I'm done ladling at the first pancake, the last pancake, the first one's ready to flip. And I'm banging out pancakes to the point where they come in like, what the hell are you doing? Stop making pancakes.
Mm.
It could have been misery. It was joy. I found a way within my crazy to make it something that I was able to get value out of myself. I'm the guy that you stick him in a tiny little room making 6 pancakes. I'm going to figure out a way to make 12.
Yeah, and that's another great skill set of a CEO too. Is there's a great story also about a pot roast where this woman is making a pot roast and she calls her mom and says, "Hey mom, how do I do this?" She's like, "No problem. First things first, cut the end off." And so she asks, "Why are we cutting the end off? Like that's just the way we've always done it. Cut the end off." So she calls her grandma and says, "Hey, I want to know why we cut the end off." "Well, that's the way that my mom's always done it." And up the chain. And turns out the reason they were cutting the end off was because the pan was too small. There was no reason. And that stuff gets passed down. And it's like, that's the way we've always done it. And that's how you do it. And it takes somebody to think creatively and differently. And like, this isn't the best way, the most efficient way. I think that's a great skill set for anybody to learn, but especially CEOs, because our job is to be innovative and creative and do things that make sense instead of just doing something because that's the way we've always done them.
And that's kind of where I was taking that story, and which is this. That was me as the CEO challenging me in a way that was meaningful to get more out of me. I actually get my enjoyment of losing my Saturday morning, my sleep-in time, my being someplace I didn't want. That was nullified by the fact that I found a way to make it challenging and interesting. So when we talk about being a good, that's what I try to give my employees. I try to figure out how their crazy is wired, because we're all nuts. So how does their crazy work? And how can I place the cookie in such a way that it makes them to love that race, to love the running of the race? And that's the thing. If you can do it, it's awesome.
Where does all this come from you, Josh? You're talking a lot about your dad when, it sounds like you're a servant to your people and you understand and know that that's going to make them work hard for you, but it also sounds super genuine and authentic. So where did all that come from?
My father, 100%. He was a hardcore businessman at New York City. Super smart guy, had dozens of patents to his name, could see what was coming. I mean, he bought the second computer IBM ever made. The first one went to the U.S. government. My father bought the second one.
Wow.
$250 million in 1950s, which is like $20 million today. But he's like, no, this is a thing. We got to do this. This is where it's made him a fortune and doing what he was doing. And he was just that guy. Never went to college, but never asked him the meaning of a word that he didn't know what it meant. Either well-read guy, just a really interesting cat. But the thing is, as hardcore as he was the kind of negotiator, and where you couldn't be in the room with him because it was so uncomfortable. The level of discomfort that he could power through, and the silence, letting it sit there. We're like, okay, forget a knife or a machete. I need a chainsaw to cut the tension in this room. He lived in that space. Right?
Yeah.
Yet at Christmas, everybody's at the house. He bought presents for every single kid, for every single employee. Always call up and find out exactly what they wanted. Make sure it was gift wrapped. Have somebody come in and play Santa and do it. Never happier than when there's a little kid on his stomach just asleep. He's a big fat guy, my dad. And, he would be asleep and the baby on, he's just at peace. He was that guy. And so he had it. He had the balance struck of, he demanded a tremendous amount from himself. I mean, I remember one instance in particular, toward the end of his life, he was in tremendous pain. They had actually thought he had fractures in his leg. They couldn't figure out how to deal with the kind of pain that he had. They were going to put a morphine pump inside of his body to take and distribute morphine to him constantly, because it wouldn't even get him. He couldn't get high if he wanted to, because that's the kind of pain that he was in. Not that he would have tried it. That wasn't his thing. But, and so I remember one day we were short-staffed on this big outdoor event. And I think we started at like 11 o'clock. At 10:45, here comes his Cadillac driving up. He gets out, stood on his legs the entire day, worked till the whole thing was done, and went home. We're talking 10, 12 hours standing on his legs. I might have taken 30, 40 Vicodin to get through it. But he did it because it came through.
Yeah.
That's another one of the things that I think is a standard that's important. I show up.
I'm just gonna say, yeah, this show up piece.
That's
Um,
when you see it displayed in front of you, you're like, that's a guy I can go. All the employees I have, they would run through a wall for my father.
right.
I mean, the respect, the way that I mean, it's crazy. And so if I could get halfway there,
Yeah.
man, that's a meaningful life.
I I love that you had a leader and an example like that. It just shows important you how much our actions and how we show up impact other people, especially our parents. But I think about this a lot too, and I challenge people on it, Josh, of we all have a reputation. And I don't think enough people think about that enough of what our reputation is. If we asked our friends, if we asked our employees, if we asked our family to describe us, and we think like, what do I want my reputation to be? Do I want to be the guy or the woman that like, when there's a major problem, I want to be your first phone call. Okay. If I want that to be the case, how am I living my life and showing up in a way that's going to make you
Absolutely.
call me? You know?
No, it flows, right? The standards first, and then the actions. If this is what I want to be, what are the actions I have to take to be this?
Yeah.
Because there's one other piece to this. There's a reputation, and there's one other piece to this that's even, I don't know, on a bigger level, more meaningful to me, which is legacy. I am
Yeah.
a legacy of people that have poured into me, people I love and respected, and whose opinion of me I would value more than just about anybody else, based upon
Yeah.
that they would say about me. My actions define whether or not I make them proud to their investors.
Hmm.
I run a real estate investment fund as part of what I do. I always make sure my investors get a return. And
Yeah.
why wouldn't I make sure my people, the people that took the time and sacrifice for me, that they're not getting a return on their commitment to me? And the other thing is, you're creating a legacy yourself. Every life that you touch, every person that you come in contact with,
Hmm.
they're your legacy. What do you
Yeah.
do?
I agree wholeheartedly. I care about that too. I want to leave impact. I want to leave contribution. I want to leave example. And like every decision that I feel like I make this, trying to do that same thing of how you're positively impacting folks. Okay. Well, I have 5 questions for you that I ask everybody on the podcast.
Sure.
And I want to leave a little bit of time because I feel like we're going to end up conversing about them as well. And the first one is, sounds simple, but again, the specificity, if you have it, is how do you for your own life, Josh, define success?
Um, I think that it's the simplest way that I could put it is to maximize functioning within what I'm here to do. I think that we spend a whole lot of time in life trying to figure out what that is. And as I more and more figure out what exactly I'm made, they say a hammer is happiest when hammering a nail.
Mhm.
Figuring out what I am, and what my nail is. I think that I've really come to that place where I'm doing everything that I do, I love, and I function well at it, and keeping the standards that I have lined up with the kind of life that I want to live, and living that every day. That to me is success, more so than money or anything else. As it turns out, those other things tend to follow. And so,
Yeah, I heard that from somebody years ago that money doesn't lead, it follows. And if you're leading with money, it's never going to work. It's always short lived.
yeah,
On that question, what do you, for people who are listening and are saying, "Gosh, Josh, that sounds great, but I don't know what my passion is, and I don't know how to find it."
well, one of the things that I had to really realize is that I'm stubborn and stupid. And so that was a revelation to me, because I didn't think I was that dumb, but I resisted. And truthfully, I resisted what I was put here to do, if you will, for a lot of my life. In school, I had made up my mind. I don't like writing. I don't like writing. It's no fun. I don't like getting my papers back all red. Punctuation sucks, whatever. And I don't like public speaking. I mean, I had many public speaking opportunities as a kid, and I was always like, nope, not going to happen. You want me up there? You think you can chase me? Because I'm really fast. I'm going to start running right now. I mean, no, not going to happen.
Yeah.
And those are two of the things that I enjoy most in life now.
Hmm.
It took me getting over my own self. And so the thing, if I was going to give people a piece of advice, they could put everything on the altar. take everything that you think you know. Because my father used to say one of his great lines, it's not what you know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know that isn't so. Put everything on throw it on the table and sit there and say, hey, look, I think I'm this way. But am I? Because you may be getting in the way of your own passion. And so,
that's some identity stuff right there, and the belief system we have about ourselves. And I talked about that in my last podcast, which was that we're like, oh, that's not who I am. And if you just add 2 words to the end of that sentence, it allows for fluidity, which is, that's not who I am right now.
Yep.
And it allows us to become, to evolve, to change. And because once we have an identity, Josh, our amygdala protects that identity. And we think that that's who we always have to be. So we never grow and change because it's safe there.
Yep. It's a thing, that stuff that you hear and you pick up on that sticks when you're a kid. It's so ingrained in there that sometimes, you can't get it out. I mean, I remember talking to some really smart people about, we debate, whatever it was, politics or whatever, these core issues that are so associated with identity. And when you really push down to what it is, somebody told me when I was a kid that this was how it is. And I hated it so much. And that's their whole worldview is based on something their 7-year-old brain took in and processed. Right. And so, really having that meeting with yourself of like, hey, why do I think this way? Where do
we hang on to things that don't serve us all the time because it's comfortable and easy, and that's just, you need to know that's how your brain works and have a game plan against it.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you think causes people to change? Because I believe people change. I don't know if you do. Yeah.
A discomfort, pain, misery. Realistically, one of the things that I'm a big believer in is turning the misery up on myself when I don't like something. I punish myself.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like this behavior. All right, I'm going to make this behavior even more uncomfortable for you. Because as it turns out, when do you go get a job? For most people, when you're broke enough. When do you get a better job? When do you take and commit to go back to school? Well, when the current suck reaches a certain threshold, it overcomes the initial inertia required to create motion, right? So what I need to do as a CEO is turn up the suck, make it suck more. And when I turn up the suck, I'm able to take and get myself. I can motivate myself. And so, to me, the pain, it's one of the reasons why, like, people ask, like, how do you help the poor? Well, how do you help the poor, but keep the suck turned up so that they want to help themselves? If you help people too much, they stop trying, right?
Yeah.
And so how do I do that with myself?
And it's funny because that's the thing that people try to avoid, like the plague, right? It's like, I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to do this. I forget who said this line, but he said, all humans will experience pain, but you don't need to suffer, because his definition of suffering was pain multiplied by resistance. And I thought that was such a great line, because when we feel the pain and you ignore it or you numb it or you suppress it, you use it. Figure out what's something that pain is trying to teach you something, and you're not listening. So instead you just, pile on top of it till you get to the point where you suffer. But yeah, that's some Tony Robbins stuff too. He very strongly feels that people really only make substantial change in their life when you're in such a state of pain. I mean, think about heartbreak. I've been there, and like, you'll give anything to be out of that. And you're just like, what do I have to do? Tell me what to do and I'll do it, because I can't feel like this every single day.
Yeah.
And I used to say I would never wish heartbreak on anybody. And now I'm like, screw that. I wish heartbreak on everybody. I learned more about myself in that period than any other time in my life. It was completely consuming and challenging and hurtful and everything. But it was like, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
The things that hurt the most provide the best type of fuel to grow if you let it. You have two choices. You can let the fuel build up and cause an explosion and just spiral down there, or you can take and light the fires and start burning that stuff to take and get you moving. Heartbreak, great one. You want to get back in the gym, you want to get back on your stuff, take it and direct it. If you just wallow in it, though, because here's the thing, right? I ask this question everywhere I teach. Who agrees there's a better version of you inside of you that you haven't seen yet? And people, like, it takes them a second, but pretty much every hand goes up. And if your hand's not up, you've agreed now that you've peaked and your life is all downhill from here. Then most people's the rest of everybody else's hands go up, right? whose job is it to get that out of you? And who's the biggest beneficiary if you get that out of you? It's you, right? But where do you grow from? Do you grow on the peaks or do you grow in the valleys? You enjoy the peaks. The vista is amazing. But the valleys is where the growth comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Suck. And so if I want the best out of me, I've got to make the suck happen. I've got to endure the suck to get to the other side, to get to that higher peak. Because we're walking into the range. The mountains only get taller as we go.
Yeah.
But we've got to endure the valleys to get the better vistas.
Yeah. And frankly, Josh, when you achieve success, and by all people's standards, you and I are successful and it's our job. I'm sure you could too, rest on our laurels. I don't need to work again for the rest of my life. But I'm building another company because I know that I have so much more to give and to offer and to challenge myself and to contribute and to impact. And so the worst thing that I do, I don't make myself comfortable. Like I don't spend my money on comforts. It's not like something I'm interested in. And I'm very aware of that, of creating an environment that like is too cushy. I think it's really dangerous.
Yeah, no, it is dangerous. You gotta keep chasing, because I think there's another piece of this too. And I don't know if you realize there's almost a fear component of this that we have to maintain, of the fear of backsliding too, right? This healthy fear that we have of our staff that, hey, look, there's this lesser version of me that I could actually fall back into. I'm always aware that guy he lives in this house. And so I can't, because he'll take a mile. And so I can't let it get too comfortable, because he's going to be like, well, I saw on Netflix and there's Oreos in the cupboard.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah. And I love that. I don't know if you know who Dick Pernocki, I think his last name is. I went hiking in Alaska a few years ago, and this guy, Dick, lived in a cabin, and he lived there solo, like decades of his life, and didn't have running water, had to hunt his food, and he would walk across the frozen lake sometimes to get into town. Every time people were like, oh my God, Dick, what can I get you? Do you want a hot shower? And he would always say no, because a man can't miss what he doesn't get used to. And he knew if he had that hot shower, that like, that felt real good. Maybe I'll go into town and have another and have another. And I just think it's the same thing. So many people are driving toward success to try to make their life so comfortable. And it's what kills your ambition, and it's what kills your potential and like your drive. And, it's really interesting that you're saying that, because I completely agree. But some people are just, once I get there, then I can go sit on the beach and not have anything of responsibility. And it's like, there's nobody who's successful for the most part that's wired. That's not what we're driving toward. We're driving toward impact and contribution, and as much of that as we possibly can do. We want the responsibility and the pressure.
As much as we can, for as long as we can, till we can't.
Yeah.
And then a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the people who make it, because they have the right reasons to be motivated. Okay, cool. Tell us, I'm sure there are many, but tell us like one of the most, if not the most formative moment in your life that shaped you to who you are in this moment.
A lot of stories I could tell, but there's really two that kind of come to mind. I'll tell you one about my dad, because that's actually probably the most consistent. My father, I was about maybe 14 years old, and he told me, look, we had this giant garage. It was a 16-car garage. The guy that built the house that we were in used to be a race car driver, so we didn't have 16 cars. That'd been kind of cool. He said, look, we have a lot of problems with power outages in this area. We were out in the sticks a little bit. He said, I want you to take and excavate this like 50, 60 foot long by 30 foot wide section, and then I want you to pour a cement driveway there, and we're going to get this giant generator that's going to be mounted on a trailer, and we need us to take and handle the weight and all this kind of stuff. But I said, same thing I always just say, okay, Daddy, how do I do it? Right? And it was the first time in my life he said to me, figure it out. Now, for starters, I didn't want to do this, because there was a whole lot of nothing that needed doing, and I was really good at doing nothing at that point in my life. So I'm at 14. I mean, what the hell do I know? The most concrete I've ever done is to like mix a fence post in like a bucket. You pour this. That's it. We're talking about hundreds of bags of concrete now. And so he wouldn't even get a concrete truck in, because my dad was Italian and from New York, so he always loved to do things without permits. That was one of his favorite calling cards. All the streets in Red Hook, Brooklyn, by the way, that are paved, he paved them on the weekends because he could never get permission to get it done. He just brought the asphalt trucks and that was it, right? So anyway, we had this cement thing. Lousy, nasty job. I mean, I had cement, the hundreds of bags of cement, whatever. Had to figure out how to excavate. That it was a mess. But I don't know, 4 or 5 days in, we finally get this project wrapping up. And I go in and I do what I always would do. I go in and I report. Like, all right, this is where we are. This is what we got going. And the cement mixer we had kept breaking, and I had to keep fixing it. And a few times in my life, my father looked at me and says, "You know what? I'm proud of you. You had a hard job. You figured out how to get it done. You kept your men working. Even when the equipment went down, you figured out how to fix. You kept it moving. You kept it going. You had a million reasons to quit, and you didn't." And I think about it because there's a few things there. My father put me in a position that flat out sucked. And he let me squirm. But he knew I needed that to figure out that I was the kind of person that could survive and persevere through that. So when I think about where this idea of, creating the valley situation so that I can come out the other side, a fire-tested champion, that's the story I think that really kind of comes. There's been a few of those. There were a bunch of those actually now that I think back, but that one comes to mind as being just a really, I didn't know on the way in. I was different on the way out than I was on the way in.
Yeah. Everybody says I need a t-shirt that says that, figure it out. I can't even tell you how many times I've said that line to people. Because Josh, same thing, your team, you could tell them what to do and how to do it, but what a massive disservice. And again, people try to say discomfort for people. Like, oh, I don't want them to be uncomfortable, or it's like, that is what they need. They need to trust themselves to be able to figure it out. And if you keep figuring it out for them, you're not going to have a team member of any value. And two, they're never going to learn. But I think it's like people are afraid of conflict. They're afraid of somebody like watching them be uncomfortable. But it's a gift. You're giving them a gift.
Absolutely. You're helping them and allowing them to take. I'm grateful to my father. I mean, all the things that made me most mad that he did to me, the jobs that I look back and I just know that it's what allowed me to do what I did later on in life. It prepared me. So creating a legacy.
Yeah. Okay, I got 2 more. I'm going to change this question a little bit because I want specificity. Tell me one non-negotiable in your life right now.
Non-negotiable. I have a lot of non-negotiables with myself.
I figured.
I mean,
tell me one that you think would benefit our listeners the most.
All right, I'll give you one that it's one of my standards. And it's to the point that it's so habituated, I don't want to think about it anymore, but it's that one I kind of mentioned before, I show up. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I had a situation the other day. I was supposed to teach in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My flight goes from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta, and the flight from Atlanta to Chattanooga gets canceled. And it's not going to leave till the next morning, and I'm going to be late if I take that flight. And so I'm immediately thinking, like, is there a shuttle service? Like, is there not? It's already midnight, and they've already told me I'm not going to get my bag off the plane. The bag's not going to come off till like 3 a.m. And it's still another 2-hour drive to where I got to get. So I make a bunch of whatever. I get a car. I drive to Chattanooga. I get in the hotel room at 3 a.m. I get 3 or 4 hours sleep. And then I show up the next day and I teach from 9 to 5, whatever. I don't even think anything of it, right? And I'm actually doing a coaching session with somebody. I'm talking. He said, like, how's your week? He's like, oh man, when they canceled my flight, I would have been like, well, I guess it's not meant to be. I'm like, that never even occurred to me. Because if I'm not there, if I tell you to be someplace and I'm not there, call the morgue. I'm dead.
Yeah.
That's the reason I'm not showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. And Josh, it goes back to the negotiation, the people on the shoulders, right? That excuse is there. It's in every situation. Oh, it's raining today. Oh, it's this. It is always there for you to come up with the reason or the excuse not to be there. And there are people who do that and there are people who don't.
Absolutely. And there's always people that I'm one of those people that take the sick pleasure in doing the things that other people won't do. Mm-hmm. I've learned that that's what allows me to deserve the success that I want. I used to be a bodybuilder back when. You wouldn't know it maybe today, but there was a time when I was in, the could cut glass on me kind of shape, right? And I remember I just finished a 2-hour workout with one of my gym, I want to call him a gym buddy. He got roped in. And so I said, all right, we're going to do like a 5 mile, like walk, jog to kind of cool off and come back in the middle of summer in Florida, which is not cool. So we had the last half mile. I said, all right, we can see my house. We're going to take and run as hard as we can this last half mile. And I never forget what he said to me. He looked me right in the eye and he said, what's wrong with you? He said, no, I mean, this is like almost 3 hours. We've been going at this. I said, look, 99 out of 100 people won't do this. When we do this, we choose not to be like them. We choose to deserve what only 1% of the people have actually done the work to do. We are up against it right. This is the moment right here, this second, left or right. If you take that road less traveled, you'll get the result that fewer people get. This is how you do it. You're at the moment. You don't have to work up to it. We've already worked up to the hard part. All we got to do is push to this last little bit.
Yeah.
It was a good day. He took off running. I was proud of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. It's again, you can like, oh, we don't need to do that. We ran enough. We're in shape enough. We already did more than other people would do. Yeah. It's that guy sitting there, the lazy, easy person who just wants to, yeah, he's always around. All right. Last question. I feel like you answered this, Josh, but what is one thing people can do today to start living a more optimized life?
Look at the things that they're doing, the places in their life where they're losing to themselves because of improper planning. Start taking that role of the CEO more seriously. I mean, the first step is to figure out what kind of life you want to live, and then use that to take and inform the CEO of what things need to be prioritized. So for me, showing up is one. That means my schedules need to be tight. I need to leave myself enough. I need to not commit myself to things that I'm on the fence whether or not I can do. If I don't have the time to do it, I can't commit to it because the standard is I show up. And so what
right there, that's that. If you guys heard that, listen again. And that's the specificity of what I'm trying to get you to do, where it's, okay, show up. Okay, show up. Okay, got it. But what Josh just did right there is when he's asked to do something, if he can't do it fully, the answer is no. And you need to commit to the things that you can show up to 100% because that's how your reputation is built. And that's how you're honoring your standards.
100%. You know, like there's one thing that when I talk about the show up thing and people know this about me, like if you ask me to help you move, I'm probably going to say no. But if I have the time and I could swing it, I will. You can hire 5 18-year-olds to help you move. I'll move more crap than all 5 of them put together. Why? Because when I do show up, I show up in force. That's part of it. It's everything. And this is it's just a simple standard, but excellence. Everything with excellence. Life's too short for half measures, right? And so, you just start putting stuff through those kind of filters, man. It allows you to be more passionate about what you do. And then all of a sudden, you're the person that people call when the chips are really down. Because you're the one they know that actually gets stuff done. They call you in and things happen. And then you get to look yourself in the mirror and know that's who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's motivating. Josh, this has been invigorating and so much fun to talk to you. If my podcast was 3 hours, we could spend the next 2 hours talking and not look for topics. But where can people find you? What's the best medium to sort of see what you're up to or get in touch with you?
A lot of stuff on social. Close for Life.
Okay.
Is my website, but on social it's Josh D. Cadillac on Instagram, Josh Cadillac pretty much everywhere else. On Amazon, I wrote a book a ways back called The Road Back to the American Dream, which is a book about how money works, because if there's one thing that we're teaching in the United States of America, it's how money actually works. And as an investor and as a guy that's had to build a fortune twice now, it's good to know how it works. It makes it a lot easier to make more of it. And the other book that I just, McGraw-Hill is coming out with for me, I think third quarter of next year, is going to be called Close for Life.
Okay.
A lot of these ideas, but also, the idea of creating a situation with customers where they won't go anywhere else. Why should they? They got the best.
Yeah. And again, guys, you're listening, reading content, there's so much access to people out there these days, more than there's ever been, through audiobooks, through books, through social, through podcasts. Like, you don't even need to pay to go to school anymore, because there are people like Josh out here who want you to win, who want you to succeed, and are putting out the content to do it. So don't be a fool. Make sure you're educating yourself in the areas that are important to you. Josh, thank you so much for today and the time and just showing up as your full self and giving us so many great insights and all of your energy. We really appreciate it.
And it was a pleasure. And thank you for inviting me on, and honestly listening to your wisdom throughout this has been a breath of fresh air. Thank you very much.